Welcome back to the Guerrilla Gardening Show, where we're talking permaculture, growing food, building community. I'm your host, Mike Freeman with Dro TV, back again with my co host, Sam Igo. What's happening, Sam?
What's up, y'all? What's going on?
Last episode, we were talking about your healthy, thriving banana circle. And now it's time to look at one not so well. So,
Let's see
um,
what we can do to help yours out.
yeah, I already know a few things that we can do, but
I've been putting some thought into it. So let's take a look at how it's looking now and we can talk it over.
yeah. I
Yeah,
know
it's
this.
been what, 4 or 5 months since I've been out and seen it in person. And it definitely wasn't large. And what you had mentioned before was that they've been there for several years and you've really never gotten a fruit. The plants just seem to die, and what you have now is just whatever pups have remained.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean it's definitely, bananas are heavy feeders, and so they're not getting enough water and nutrients to grow healthily.
Yeah.
Papaya
So,
tree you got there looks real happy. They're not as
yeah.
heavy of feeders.
Yeah. That papaya is like less than 2 years old. And these bananas, I mean, I've had bananas on both sides of this compost die and pups grow in its place. One, I had a branch fall on it, bend it in half, which actually it did end up surviving, but then um, something else fell on it. And, already being weak from it was bent in half. And then I stuck a pole like minutes later because I saw it happen. Stuck a pole there, zip tied it, and it survived like another 6 months. But um, if we take a look at this video here, I mean, I'll start it in a second. But what's your initial thoughts looking at this?
Well, I mean, I like to start with questions so I can get the full picture.
Sure.
And my first question is, what are you doing for the soil around these bananas other than the compost bin?
Absolutely nothing.
So that's definitely, the place to start. And when with my banana circle and how I like to, create those banana systems, where obviously we're, focusing nutrients in the center, we're building compost there, but the whole area around where the bananas are planted is, you know, very heavily managed and tended to cycle nutrients quickly to mostly feed the bananas. Um, you see in my banana circle, I also had some papayas, but I talked about how those papayas weren't really there for harvest so much as to chop down and feed nutrients to the bananas because they grow so fast. Same thing with the grasses and the uh, other annual plants that were going around there. So that's really the first thing I noticed is, you know, it is good that we have the compost pile in the middle. Um, but, you know, and in this video, you don't normally have grass growing through there. It's normally a mulched area. You do keep it mulched. I have seen that.
Yeah, it is mulch. I mean, it was a 6 to 8 inch layer of mulch a year ago. So, I mean, it's definitely due for another input.
Overdue, I would
Overdue
say.
for sure.
Once the grass starts coming through. And so that's really how we build and help the soil around the bananas. My banana pit is essentially a mulch pit. And since those bananas have been planted, I mean, I constantly add new mulch to that system. And now that's not the traditional mulch of wood chips that, you might be using and a lot of other people use. I just create mulch from the plants, in the system and around the yard. Um, Weeds make a great source of mulch. Um, you got to be uh, delicate with how you use certain things, but lots of plants can make good mulch, and mulch is what feeds the systems. And so, you've said that this hasn't been new mulch hasn't been added to this in at least a year. And
Mhm.
that's way too long. You know, anything, any fast nutrients that break down from the organic matter in the mulch are absorbed, within, I'm not going to put a time span, but a couple months. After a year, most of the material that is left is depleted of a lot of its nutrients. It's essentially just carbon and water. And so, it doesn't really feed the bananas anymore. It doesn't really feed anything other than some microbes. Carbonous mulch on the surface is good, but it's not a nutrient dense mulch. So, that would be the first thing I would do here is plant something near these bananas that's gonna be a mulch plant. And really, you have two bananas, and so we want 75% mulch plants to 25% production plants. So you've got two bananas. So I would do at least four mulch plants around this.
Okay. Lemongrass fall into that?
Lemongrass, yes, can be a mulch plant. Um, it's a sharp one, and so it's not something you want to go cut barehanded.
Hmm.
But you know, if you have it, it makes a great chop and drop. It's just like any other bunching grass, and as long as it's healthy, it grows back pretty rapidly. And so, that's something that can be cut sometimes once a month and produce a decent amount of biomass. And also, lemongrass can be divided. So if you have one healthy one, you can divide it into multiple, sometimes many. I've divided a, a large healthy clump into upwards of 20 different plants.
Yeah. I
Um,
got 32 last year out of one.
yeah, that's a good number. You're real precise with how you propagate, and like I admire that. I don't have the same patience that you do.
The
But
weed helps.
yeah, absolutely. Hit that joint and then just stare at
Yeah.
the roots for a couple of hours. You get real
Yeah.
personal
It
with
takes twice as long, but it
it.
helps with the process. Now, Sam,
um,
to get rid of this grass, I usually weed whack. I did maybe that's how I killed one of these bananas was weed whacking it. Um, so my initial thought is I'm working on a chip drop load. Um, Rake back all of this, put a layer of cardboard down, and then input mulch on top of the cardboard to smother out some of this grass, and then get my lemongrass or whatever plants in there. That's my initial thought. Tell me what you think.
think that it's a good plan and you're just adding a little bit extra work to yourself unnecessarily. You
Okay.
don't need you can put cardboard directly on top of this.
Okay.
With the other mulch underneath it. I would uh probably inoculate it with like a EM solution. You can get good EM solutions off, I mean, even Amazon. But uh you can look and see what kind of bacteria they're putting in there, and you're looking for lactobacillus bacteria, and you're looking for photosynthetic or phototropic bacteria. And those are things that are going to speed up the decomposition process and speed up the cycling of the nutrients. Now, with chip drop, and if people aren't familiar with chip drop is a great resource to get free arborist wood chips. And arborist wood chips are uniquely great because they come with leaves and small, fresh growth that has lots of nitrogen and other nutrients that are quickly broken down. And, they make for a better decomposition. If you were buying wood chips from a mulch place, or out of a bag, those wood chips are going to be strictly old carbonous wood material. and that's going to result in a really slow decomposition and not much nutrient cycling, through those chips. So, the adding the cardboard down is a good first step, and it's great, especially if you have cardboard that you need to get rid of. It's better than burning it, and it's really good for attracting earthworms. Um, but if you have enough mulch, you don't really need, the cardboard. I always say that cardboard replaces about 1 inch of compressed mulch. So, if you don't have cardboard, just add an extra inch of mulch. But if you have cardboard, it can save you. It can make your mulch go a little further. The other important thing is, when thinking about mulch for these bananas, you got to think about a lot of about mostly green material. That's the kind of mulch you want to be putting down here. So
Okay.
if you were to grow peas and you had long pea vines, you'd want to cut those and throw them down as mulch because they're full of nitrogen, and other main nutrients that are going to cycle through that quickly. um, Squash and anything that produces a lot of green biomass quickly. This pretty papaya right here, it's got a lot of nice green leaves on it. But those are the things you want to incorporate into that brown mulch to really feed the system, you know. And the main hurdle here is really not fighting the grass. If the grass grows, it's not really a problem as long as the bananas are growing as well. And the grass is not the banana's main problem. Um, the grass can become a problem to us, when it becomes unkempt, and when we're trying to work in areas, it can be more difficult. But in in the end, the thing that will control the grass is shade. The only thing that stops grasses from growing is, being shaded out. So feed the heck out of the bananas, and
Okay.
adding some manures. Bananas are the one thing that can take, you know, most uncomposted manures without problem. Um, I, I I will throw some chicken manure on them from time to time. I don't go crazy with it, but even the little amounts I've seen no problem. Um, and so, adding that to give these banana corms a little boost, because I mean, they've been struggling for a long time. Um, and so it may come down to, they're not super healthy anymore, and they may not be healthy enough to produce a mature plant. One way you could find that out, if you were to dig one up, you could take a look at the corm, and a healthy corm is going to be solid, and it's going to have, thicker roots coming off the main. You see holes bored into the corm, or pieces of it that are, starting to rot, then it's really going to make more sense just to, you know, continue to work on this area, but just to replace them with another banana corm, if you want bananas.
One thing I have done recently when pruning my moringa trees, I don't have the time right now to dry moringa leaves, make them into powder. So I just cut the branches, break the little, you know, twig leaf branches off, and I've been scattering them around my beds. And then, this was in the last couple months, and then I inputted, you know, the cow manure and stuff on top of that, and then layer of compost and mulch and stuff. But maybe that's my plan because I've got a couple moringas I need to cut back, and also the Cuban oregano I have in the front. I did some pruning recently, and that's just straight mulch on top of old grass. So that really doesn't have the best soil out there either. So I just cut a bunch of Cuban oregano and just chopped and dropped, left it out there. But maybe I need to bring some into the back and start building this up quite a bit.
I think you're on the right strategy. Um, you're you don't want to remove, that Cuban oregano that's in that area up there, keep popping it in there, but take a cutting of it and propagate it, duplicate it, and then incorporate one over here by the bananas.
Okay.
Because that area has other plants that you care about, and you want to do the same things there. The nutrient cycling practices are really necessary throughout the entire system. The bananas are going to struggle, or the thing struggling the most without it. But you want healthy soil everywhere.
Sure.
So, you know, it's best, and I would say this is maybe a controversial statement, but I think it's best to use your chop and drop as close to where the plant is that's producing it, because the immediate nutrients and resources and microbial activity that are supporting that plant are in that area, and that's what created that material you're using. And so we can replenish what we've taken, and also increase the microbial populations, which increases the fertility of the soil in that area if we're using the chop and drop there. If we're constantly taking our chop and drop to a new place just continuously and never returning any to that site, eventually the soil in your chop and drop sites are going to become depleted. Um, and that's I would say impractical anyways, because for lazy gardeners, you want to be able to just cut it and leave it where it is. Why would
Sure.
you want to bundle it up and take it to the other side of the yard?
Yeah.
um
Well, because it's like 5 feet tall and 4 feet around, and it's huge. But no, I have plenty of stuff in the back here. Those moringas, the sea grape is really, there's a lot of undergrowth on that sea grape I want to prune back. Um, so yeah, I've got other options. It's kind of hard to see here in this video, um, but kind of where I'm pointing right there is a bunch of sunflowers growing that fell out of the bird feeders. So
oh, cool.
that my plan is just to use that as biomass when and if they do, turn into I mean, it's a regular sunflower, but um,
Yeah, that's a great
nonetheless.
cover crop. they
Yeah,
uh their deep tap roots harvest a lot of stuff from the deep into the soil profile that are then brought up into the plant. And then when you put it on the surface, all of that stuff is returned, to the shallow root areas around our young plants. Um, and I would say, you know, uh, keep doing it. That's really the thing, throw more seeds out here around these areas. If you got peas, pigeon peas, your moringa seeds, get some stuff growing. Bananas, especially young bananas, actually do appreciate some shade. They're, more of a part sun plant. And so, if you have some moringa trees here growing over top of them, they're actually going to enjoy that. Um, Pigeon peas are another great one to plant around the moringas, because they can, create a lot of extra nitrogen, and then you can easily feed that back to the bananas. Um, but yeah, and honestly, having some stuff growing on the ground, growing squash and peas and sweet potatoes, even out here on the ground, is going to, help with your grass a little bit. And those are species that'll stick around more when it's shadier. Um, but the key, you know, it's not terrible if you miss it, but if you want the peak amount of nutrients from your chop and drop, you want to get them while they're flowering and before they've produced any sort of fruit or seed, because once that fruit or seed has developed, then a lot of the energy that the plant has collected, it stores tons of nutrients and amino acids inside those seeds so that those young plants can have a good start. But we don't like seeds in our chop and drop, too often, depending on what it is.
Sure.
Uh, and so, we can't utilize those. If it gets locked up in the seed, then essentially you have to wait until that seed grows into a plant and produces biomass to utilize those nutrients. So we catch them when they're flowering, and that's easiest to do with the annuals. Like if you're growing cowpeas, black-eyed peas through the system, once they start flowering, we cut them all down. They're not meant to harvest peas from. Same thing if we were doing squash, all that stuff to be cut. And once the system's healthy, then it can support some more productive plants other than, the bananas. But when the main focus is the bananas and the bananas aren't successful, then every amount of, focus needs to go towards the plants that we're trying to fix here.
Okay.
Plumeria is looking pretty lush. If you use some of those leaves.
Yeah, those always get spread around. Those are great mulch, but usually not until like December. But
Yeah, when they
um,
go dormant. And it's good to have some in the winter,
yeah,
especially here in the tropics.
for sure. So Sam, we've got just a couple minutes left, but I do want to bring up one thing. Um, how moist should these bananas be, or how wet do they need to be?
Well, does this area ever flood? Has it ever had standing water in it for more than an hour or so?
No, but if you look in this video, and I do walk over there, so I'll point it out when we get to it. Um, you'd think I was Italian with all this pointing. So, this is like green block here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at one point, it has kind of washed away because I moved it and then I put it back recently. But I kind of built a berm with these like these green edging stones here. And when I first put these in a couple years ago, it was dirt, brought in the mulch and everything. And so this is the low point heading along this fence towards the back corner. So my thought was that this would prevent nutrients from getting flushed away and wood chips, everything else. And it did for a while kind of create like a natural berm. And then when I took those away naturally over time, it washed that away. But would a berm of some sort help in this area?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's a great observation to see where or how the water flows through your property. And so, you know, that would help tremendously with the water needs of these if you built. And what I would do is just depending on how much water you get, you can dig out a little bit in front, pile that soil on the back. And what you want to happen is to stop the water when it's coming and then slow it down long enough for it to actually go into the soil instead of just continuing down off of your property. And the stones kind of work for that, but water can still escape under them without going into the soil. So if you were to actually, shape the earth into a uh, contoured mound around where the water flows, you want it shaped like that stone, but obviously more broad. And then that could slow the water down, and feed at least this banana a little more. Um, and depending on how much rain you get, you can divert your gutters down here and really, recharge the system. But as far as how much water should these bananas be getting, I would say all
Okay.
of it. If when you have time to water the bananas.
Right.
Uh, my bananas, they don't get watered. I mean, they get hit by my irrigation, I would say at least once a week. And my irrigation runs for an hour at a time. And now it rains. So they get watered at least, an hour every week. And, so like the drought that we've just come out of, the bananas are going to require a lot more water than they're going to get from nature. So they're going to need, deep waterings at least once a week. And deep means, act like the rain, water it for 45 minutes to an hour, as long as you can. Just set the hose out there. But I think with what we talked about, you could definitely make some big improvements to the banana's health.
Yeah, maybe we do a check-in a few months from now and check out the progress since we are beginning of July here and we know it's going to be hot for the next several months. So I think that would be a good
Peak growth
update.
season. Yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to see them by the end of the summer.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Sam, tell everybody where they can find more of you in Central Florida Abundance.
Absolutely. You can find Central Florida Abundance on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to check out the uh, regenerative gardening practices that I apply in my yard and yards around Central Florida. You can also check out the Igo Family Farm on Instagram and igofarm.com if you want to get some of our produce.
Excellent. Make sure you go down and subscribe, as well as check out Sam and his channels and pages, as well as myself, Mike's in the Garden. So thank you for tuning in. If you want to grab a cool Guerrilla Gardening shirt, Etsy shop, some of these cool designs.